What's up, everyone, and happy Nvidia Day. 56% of stocks in the S&P 500 closed down in the red today as we saw a lot of profit taking across a whole bunch of different industries ahead of this big Nvidia earnings report. In today's video, we're going to cover everything you have to know about what's going on with Nvidia right now, but as well as the overall market, because some crazy things are starting to pick up, kind of like how SMCI got obliterated today as they announced that they are not going to be filing their annual report on time, and this sent shares down at nearly 20%, but SMCI isn't the only stock moving in a crazy way. So we have a lot to talk about today. We have a lot of great setups for tomorrow, and towards the end of today's video, we have a very interesting $1.5 million big money trade. So stick with us. We have a lot to cover for tomorrow, and besides that, Tom, let's not waste any time.
Yeah, the SPY actually fell all the way down today to that 555 support. Started bouncing there towards the end of day, bounced right back up. I know that we've talked about that level a little bit over the past couple days, so that was a big spot to see it bounce back up at here. But in after hours, I'm worried about this potentially breaking, Mike. We had Nvidia report. Everybody's been waiting for this report tonight. It finally happened. The suspense was killing me in after hours, waiting for this one to come out. But looking at their earnings a little bit more in depth, Mike, they actually had a really good report, and the stock is not showing it. So they had 122% revenue growth on surging demand, obviously, but as we go down, they beat on EPS and revenue as well, and even their outlook for Q3 of 2025 beat estimates a little bit. So, they didn't explode above estimates, but still, this was a great report by them. And I don't know, Mike, it's another one of those earnings situations that makes people scratch their head.
And then, Tom, you're also forgetting about the $50 billion share buyback they announced. So whether you're looking at NVIDIA's profit, their revenue growth, their guidance, or this $50 billion share buyback, they're doing pretty good, to say it lightly. But just because the company's doing good, it doesn't mean their stock has to go up on earnings, because as we look at NVIDIA's chart over the past couple of years, this thing has just been ripping so much so that the market kind of expects phenomenal earnings from this company. So in order for them to truly blast higher, they have to just report a phenomenally good earnings report. And while the stock has been a little bit disappointing in after hours so far, earnings, especially with Nvidia, are as volatile as they come, because as the conference call happens, that's when we'll get even more information related to this most recent quarter and their future plan. So keep in mind, it still has a lot of volatility left in the tank, but looking at this stock tomorrow, it'll be very important to keep a close gauge on how the, I guess you could say, flows are coming in. Nvidia is one of those stocks where when it's trending to the upside in a strong way, it clearly has that exponential potential, but at the same time, as we've seen many points over the past year, when this stock does have panic come in, it tends to get really crazy really quickly, and that has been demonstrated again multiple times throughout the past year. So with Nvidia right now, it's all game of momentum, and Nvidia, as we all know, has a very large direct impact on the market as a whole.
Yeah, it definitely does, Mike. It's one of the biggest weightings in the S&P 500, and we have a nice chart kind of showing just the impact that the largest companies in the S&P have. And, we looked at the weightings chart yesterday. NVIDIA's number 2 on the list, right? Now we have the top 5 companies represent 28% of the S&P 500's total market cap. That's quite a bit. And you can see, especially over the recent years, since the 80s, that percentage has not been anywhere near 28%. Right? At the higher end, somewhere around 10 to 18%. But either way, Mike, it's pretty crazy just to say that these little handful of companies have such a large influence. And we can see that on the heat map too. The heat map is a good representation. It shows these blocks, and the bigger the block, the more the weighting, right? So you can see how, these 5 stocks that I'm circling here make up most of the S&P.
For sure. And when we look at the weightings more specifically, like you said, Nvidia is at that number 2 spot with a weighting of just under 7% for the entire S&P 500. When we scroll down the list, we could see that, it just dwarfs just so many other companies. So long story short, this Nvidia earnings report is a big deal for the market as a whole. And when we look at Nvidia earnings, it's easy to look at, I guess you could say news that explains it, like revenue growth up 122% and a $50 billion share buyback, but that is not what necessarily moves the stock. It's ultimately like the supply and demand associated with it. So again, looking at Nvidia tomorrow, let's follow the money, let's ride the trend. Of course, let's trade in a way that aligns with proper disciplined risk management strategies, but this stock will be pretty crazy and pretty explosive tomorrow, so let's keep a close eye on it.
Yeah, definitely do so. And, whenever I think about NVIDIA and earnings in general, Mike, sometimes we'll see these earnings moves and they'll fall down a little bit, right? And then we'll post the video and 2 hours later, tonight while I'm making dinner, I'll look and NVIDIA will be all the way up, breaking out, right? So sometimes these earnings can definitely flip-flop, with how the numbers came out. And since they were fairly positive, maybe we'll see it climb up a little bit in the morning. We'll have to see, like you stressed, the volatility with these earnings is very strong and it goes all over the place. Now, the implied move with NVIDIA, Mike, today was around $15, right? It looks like it's pretty far off, and that's, at least for right now, why we always say it's so important to be careful playing earnings with options whenever you're, trading earnings or trying anything like that, right? It's a pretty tough thing to do.
And another thing to keep in mind really quickly with Nvidia especially is because it's such a popular stock, the more it moves up, the more buying pressure it ultimately attracts. For example, if everyone sees that Nvidia starts rocketing to the upside and is making and going for a brand new all-time high, then that's going to make everyone want to jump back into it and make the stock go up even more. At the same time, because Nvidia stock has risen so much over the past couple of years, there's a whole bunch of money that just, flocked into Nvidia, some at good prices, some at bad prices. But regardless, if we start to see the stock, let's say, break below like the $18 area, or maybe down to like 115, that could bring in a lot of panic and just, maybe even some margin calls, which will have the same effect, and I guess you could say intensifying the move, but to the downside. So again, let's follow momentum and keep a close eye on it. But another area of the market that, or I guess you could just say, another area of the market that has just been struggling lately are just these chip stocks in general. SMCI got obliterated today as basically they announced that they're going to be delaying their annual report. For those of you who don't know, this is a very sus move. There's not many good reasons you would do this, and this is coming just after Hindenburg disclosed a short position in the company, alleging fresh evidence of accounting manipulation. So some suspicious things are going on with SMCI right now, and this will ultimately also have like an effect on Nvidia because it just kind of like worsens the sentiment with chip stocks overall. So just keep that in mind for tomorrow and keep SMCI and even SMH on your radar because they are good gauges of the semiconductor / chip industry as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. And whenever I think about SMCI, I'm like, wow, of course, Hindenburg comes out with that and says that there could be manipulation, and then they out of nowhere delay their accounting stuff that they're supposed to release, right? Like it's kind of funny, right? They're like, oh no, now we're gonna get caught. We better fix it. But either way, the stock is actually down on a pretty key level, Mike. $400 is what SMCI bounced off of today, so it's sitting at a pretty crucial spot as well. I'll be keeping $400 on watch for that one if we end up seeing a good breakdown below that. There might be an opportunity there, and SMH, like you said, encapsulates many of the chip stocks. Of course, it's down tonight with Nvidia, but everything can change tomorrow, of course, if we do see Nvidia happen to recover back up.
There we go. But as we look at the market as a whole right now, things are starting to get pretty exciting for multiple reasons. Of course, we have the chip industry starting to move in some pretty crazy ways. We have the election coming up, and we're still pretty close to record highs for the S&P 500. But something that's pretty interesting is that, well, I guess on one note, Warren Buffett just crossed the $1 trillion market cap valuation, and he was the first company outside of a tech company to do that. So congratulations to Warren Buffett. But the reason I bring this up is because he's been making some pretty, what we'll call, interesting moves lately, where he's been selling half of his Apple stake, and he's been selling more and more of his Bank of America shares as well, and now he owns more T-bills than the Federal Reserve itself. While Warren Buffett might not say his opinions on the market nice and plainly, when you look at his actions, they sure say a lot. When you sell, your half of your biggest holding, Apple, that says a lot. But then also when you're increasing your cash pile, it clearly shows that you're not the bullish, I guess you could say the most bullish ever on the market. So as we navigate the market right now, let's take note of the actions that, phenomenal investors like Warren Buffett have been doing, because, you can gain a lot of good information from them. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, you definitely can. And whenever I start to think about him doing that, it's just, you have such an influential figure out there starting to sell out of Apple, right? And it's not just like, oh yeah, we're trimming a little bit of Apple here. We're talking half of the position. And for those of you that don't know, Apple still is the main player in Berkshire, right? So Mike, I know you said, I know that article says that Berkshire is outside of tech, but I don't know. Do they count as being outside of tech? I guess technically they do, but since they invest in tech, I don't know, it's kind of, it's interesting to think about, right? But it is kind of funny though that something outside of tech, like an investment firm, would be the next thing to hit $1 trillion, of course.
Yeah, so the main thing is that let's be a little bit skeptical about the market right now. That doesn't mean the market's going to crash and burn, but understand the moves that big investors are making. And it's not that they're, over the top bearish, but they're definitely done in a protection sense, and profits are being taken, not only from Warren Buffett, but just investors as a whole. And that is made more than evident when we look at the heat map, because heading into this Nvidia earnings report, we saw a good amount of profit taking across the entire market. So, and again, it's not necessarily a bad thing to do right now either, especially as we get closer and closer to this year's election. But Nvidia was definitely the earnings report of the week, Tom, but we have a handful of other exciting stocks on the schedule as well.
Yeah, we definitely do. Tonight, CrowdStrike, Salesforce, and Affirm reported as well. We'd like to have them all in the video, but I don't know, Mike. We might bore people with like a 70-minute video if we had to cover all of them. On Thursday, we do have Lululemon reporting tomorrow, along with Dell in after hours. MRVL is another chip stock, and then in pre-market, we do have Dollar General and Best Buy. So that's the rest of the earnings for the week. But going into the economic calendar, we do have some GDP numbers tomorrow, which will be pretty interesting.
Yeah, 1 hour before market open, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And then for Friday, we have some personal income, personal spending, and PCE data. So that is it for the schedule, Tom. So let's dive right into some levels and analysis for SPY.
Yeah, looking at SPY for tomorrow here, it's pretty interesting, right? We fell down today, bounced off 555, which we did talk about yesterday, and if we look at 555 in the short term, that was a major level where SPY bottomed out on Thursday of last week. So that's going to be a big support to watch. If we open up well below 555, then I'll be pretty bearish, and I'll just be watching for that support to break all day. There is some minor support right around 554, just under there as well, of course. It's like a bit of a range right there where we've seen a few bounces. So I really want to see a breakdown of that. Then I'll be watching for 552, 550, and then 549 underneath there. Those are the main levels to the downside. To the upside, I'll be watching 559, 560, 561, and then 562.50 before we hit that high of the week again at 563.50. If you guys want to, go ahead and screenshot this chart. There's quite a bit of levels on here.
Sounds good. All right, well, let's get right into some setups and predictions then. A stock I'm watching very closely right now is Netflix, and it is to the downside. This stock has done very well over the past couple of years or so, but it has some heavy resistance overhead, not only on like an absolute level in terms of like the $700 resistance, but also when you zoom out on the chart, you can see that it's right at the point that it peaked at back in November of 2021. So this shows that there is a lot of selling pressure here, and just by looking at the way in which the stock is moving, that is made pretty clear. So Netflix is definitely on my bearish radar for the short term. I would love to see a break below the $680 level again, and then for the stock to put continuous pressure on its low of day. If that happens and the market is also relatively weak, I think this could make for a great bearish setup.
Yeah, me too. I love this one to the downside. It's starting to reject pretty well here up around the top, and I could see it continuing down for a couple more days. With my first play, I'm looking at Uber here, and Uber had a pretty bad move today as well. They were down 1%. They've been falling off a little bit the past few days. I'm going to really watch that $71 support. I like this resistance that they're at, and if they keep rejecting here tomorrow morning and then they break this double bottom around 71, then I'll just keep watching them down, and I'm just looking for more downside pressure and momentum. If we go to a daily chart of Uber, they're on a pretty major daily resistance as well, and that's going to be the main rejection point that I'm looking for.
Good stuff. All right, another stock I'm watching pretty closely is ANF, and it is also to the downside. ANF is another stock that has done very well over the past year or so, and they reported earnings today, and they fell off quite a bit. They're down around 17% on the day, but it's another one of those stocks where like it trends in a pretty strong and consistent way. Looking at ANF right now, again, if we could break that recent low right around like 134 to 135 and put continuous pressure on its low of day, I think it could make for a good bearish earnings continuation. And the setup I'm ultimately looking with this one for is somewhat similar to the setup with PDD. This stock basically fell off quite a bit also because of earnings, but they continued lower for multiple days after the fact. And this is what you would just call a earnings continuation setup, and it happens quite a bit in both directions. So again, either way, ANF is on my bearish radar.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit. Some of these earnings moves here have been pretty crazy, and these continuations have been working out pretty well on a few different stocks, so I'll definitely keep watching it. You know, that was a pretty brutal drop, 17%. It's not like it's only down 2% in after hours or something. Like, we're talking an insane amount here. But with my next play, I'm looking at AMD, and it's not looking too good here in after hours. I'm really watching some major upcoming supports. I want to see a nice re-break for tomorrow back under 144. We could see that in pre-market or even later on in after hours tonight, depending on what happens with Nvidia. But if that happens, I'm going over to the Bookmap. We could see a pretty good break of that support. I really like 145 and 144, but note how both levels are pretty decent, and I want to see a true break to the downside. So I'm going to make 144 break, then I'll keep looking at AMD down. If it breaks it in pre-market, then it's mainly just a game of momentum from there. If we actually scroll out a little bit on the Bookmap, we can see that there's going to be another major support coming up right around 140. So if we do see some good downside momentum, that could be a decent target there. And, you know, again, shout out to Bookmap for the levels here. I love finding these nice targets like this.
Love to see it, and it's very important to be aware of those levels, just like you said, because without seeing these, I guess you could say, these walls of buying pressure with AMD, you would have never have known that there's a whole bunch of buyers stacked up there. So great stuff there with AMD and Bookmap. But besides that, Tom, I think we are all set for today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have Intel to the downside.
Poor Intel here. They actually broke under the $20 support today, and I have to go to the daily chart on Intel just to show this because it's starting to get pretty low and back towards the recent low here. So if we see a good breakdown of this double bottom at 1950, then keep watching it down, but that $20 support break was pretty rough again today.
This Intel chart is depressing. Seriously. Like, when you look at Intel, whether it's over the past couple of weeks or the past year or the past couple of years, it basically just gets worse and worse. So Yeah, so we have Intel and watch for tomorrow. With the next one, we have JP Morgan, but to the upside.
Yeah, so banks have been pretty resilient in the short term. Even today, while the market was a little bit flat to down, JP Morgan ends up popping up a little bit. So if it can break this high of day right around 222, then keep watching it up. It did extend above 222 slightly up to 222.20. So maybe give or take a little bit around that 222 level.
All right, with the next one, we have Amazon for both directions.
Amazon, pretty crazy here. A tech stock. It's probably going to bounce around quite a bit with Nvidia heading into tomorrow. But if it ends up breaking under 168.80, just under that low of day, then watch them back down. If they do end up ripping back above 172, then watch them back to the upside.
All right, so we have the upside level for a potential move higher. We have the downside level for a potential move lower. That's for Amazon. Don't forget about the upside level with JP Morgan and then the downside level with Intel. These three stocks are on watch for potential day trades tomorrow if and only if they break through the levels Tom listed. We want to see strong, consistent movement here. If they don't break the levels, then don't force the setup. But besides that, we are all clear for today's $1.56 million big money trade. And we are looking at ticker symbol CLDX. Now, this is a company that most people have probably never heard of before, and I don't blame you. It is a biotechnology stock, and the big money is getting pretty bullish with this one. So this is going to sound a little bit complicated at first, but bear with me for a minute, and I'll make it nice and simple. Basically, what the big money did today is they placed a bullish trade where they want CLDX to go up. More specifically, they bought the 40 strike call options and they shorted the 60 strike call options, both of which expire on November 15th of 2024. All this means in nice simple terms is that they want the stock to go up, and in order for their trade to actually have value, they need it to be greater than $40 a share, and their maximum profit will be achieved once the stock gets to $60 a share. If you don't want to deal with this complicated spread, you can just follow the 40 strike call options for November 15th of 2024. It'll be a very similar trade, and your life will be much more simple. But either way, looking at CLDX, again, this is a biotechnology stock. It has been channeling for quite a while now, and it has started to make higher lows, which is a good sign. Stocks like this one move a lot based off of FDA drug approvals, and I guess you could just say any updates related to the treatments that they are making. Biotechnology stocks are some of the most volatile and crazy stocks in the market, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Of course, sometimes they will plummet, but other times they will rise in a quicker way than almost anything else. With that being said, if you decide to follow this trade, it will be crucial that you give it the time it needs. These options expire on November 15th of 2024. This is not an option for tomorrow or even this week. These options have time, so if you decide to follow this trade, just understand that it's in your strategic interest to align yourself with the big money.
Some of these like biopharma big money plays are so interesting, right? And I'm really glad to see this one being a spread because it kind of gives us a better outlook on the direction, right? Like, of course, a lot of times we're worried about maybe that it's a covered call play or something like that, but I'm really glad that it's a spread, kind of lets us see that direction a little bit better. And I really do like that $40 mark here. That's a pretty solid resistance. And, looking at this stock over the past, few months to the past year, it's been continually bouncing off of this low, and a lot of times when it bounces off that low, it gets pretty high here in the short term. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it get above 40 over the next couple weeks. And for all the gap fill traders out there too, there's like a nice gap up to around 41.50 here.
Love to see it. So either way, keep a close eye on this one going forward, but it is an exciting time to be a trader. Nvidia earnings are freshly released. We have the stock market still pretty close to all-time highs. Some stocks like SMCI are getting destroyed, and this is just making for a volatile, fun trading environment. When you see volatility and big moves, that shows that there's opportunity, especially for short-term trading. When there's nothing happening, then there's nothing happening and there aren't as many opportunities. So going into tomorrow, let's trade in a smart, disciplined, long-term oriented way. Let's plan and follow our trade plans with all trades we take. Let's follow the money and let's just trade in a smart, good way. If you guys are into short-term trading, definitely check out the StockedUp trading floor. We still have the sale going on for the 100K subscriber special. Coupon code 100K will lock you in at a pretty nice yearly rate. So definitely check that out. Today in the trading floor, our SM bot crushed it with some Costco put options that popped up by 367%, some PDD put options that popped up by 207%, some Starbucks put options that popped up by 205%, and a handful of other trades. In addition to our bots, you also get access to the big money trades that we cover in the videos, but you get access to them on the same day the trade is made, which can oftentimes make for better entry prices. You could chat with Tom and myself all day long, as well as many other pieces of software and benefits. But another really cool thing is you could join our weekly live events, which is actually tonight. So if you get in before 9 p.m. Eastern time, we will see you at tonight's live event. Again, coupon code 100K will get you a really good price on the yearly plan, and we don't do sales too often. But besides that, it's an exciting time to be a trader. And Tom, we can't forget, before we close out of the Discord, we have to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Goob, who had a great post yesterday showing some awesome profits with some QQQ call options. But then he also said, not a member, but I'm about to be. The StockedUp videos have been my daily morning routine for the last month. What a killer community. Love to see that. So awesome job there, and keep on rolling. But besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's have an amazing day in the market tomorrow.